Right on, Brian. Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, you can go online. I'm just strictly talking the first 50 years, 1920 to 1970. You can go online, especially back in the 20s and the 30s and all, and you can find box scores of the game. Obviously, what the score of the game was, who scored a touchdown, how far the field goal was. You can find what the attendance was for the game, where the game was played at, what stadium was played at, maybe the starting lineups and all. But there's a lot of times there's not a whole heck of a lot of information out there. So what we want to do is find out exactly what happened during each and every game in the first 50 years of football. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game. Now, there's a little news flash here for you. There ain't no fancy videos here, nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So that's all right with you? Let's get it on. And today's game we're going to talk about is another exhibition game. Vince Lombardi's fifth game as head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers and the Washington Redskins at Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Holy cow. Yeah. Exhibition game, September 12th, 1959. Now, this is we're talking about Vince Lombardi. It's kind of like three things, right? Unfortunately, I'm a Giant fan. Where did Vince Lombardi first come in the NFL? Giants from 1954 to 58. 59 to 67, he coached the Packers. 68, he was the Packers GM. And then 1969, sadly, his final year of coaching, he was with the Washington Redskins. He was pretty much a savior, obviously in Green Bay. Green Bay in 1958 was 110-1. They hadn't been to a championship game since 44. So he stepped in, and by the second season, he took them to a championship game. Then you can surmise that he might have been a savior with the Redskins when he took over in the 1969 season. That was their first winning season. It was 7-5-2 in a long time. They had been, 1945 was their final championship game appearance. And from 46 to 68, there was not much going on of anything in Washington. Finally, Lombardi comes around in 1969, takes them to a 7-5-2 record. 1970, they slipped back to a 6-8 mark. They had a good offense. Their defense was a little suspect. But then, 1971, who pops up? George Allen, who is a defensive-minded coach, and their defense stepped up big time. And obviously, you could surmise that Lombardi would have really turned the Redskins around. But Allen did. And by Allen's second season, Allen had the Redskins not only back in, they got to the playoffs in 71, but back in the playoffs in 72, and he took them to the Super Bowl. So, there were obviously good times ahead for the Washington Redskins once Vince Lombardi took over in 1969. But this is just a simple preseason game. This was not a good year at all for the Redskins. In fact, we'll look at let's stop the chitter chatter and let's look at the old schedule here. This was the fifth preseason game for both teams, but the Redskins won a grand total of 4 games all year, including their preseason games. It was not pretty for them. They played against a grand total of 6 preseason games for the Redskins, 12 regular season games. They played 18 games. They won 4 of them. They're kind of like my Giants. They're absolutely pathetic. All right, share screen. Let's go here. Schedule. Start off with the Packers. Now, the Packers, the first 2 games of the exhibition season, preseason, whatever you want to call it, first 2 were basically they played 1 game at home in Green Bay. That was the first one against the Bears there in County Stadium. And then the second game they played in Kezar Stadium against the 49ers, where the 49ers play. Then the final 4 games are all out in various parts of the country. Like their third preseason game, as you see there, they went to Portland, Oregon, played in Multnomah Stadium. Then they played the Giants in Bangor, Maine, which actually happened to be the first ever professional football game in the state of Maine. And now they're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where they played the Redskins. Apparently from 1955 to 1960, for whatever reason, don't know, the Redskins and the Packers played in Winston-Salem, North Carolina in the exhibition. After 1960, they stopped doing that. But and then the last preseason game the Packers would play would be the Pittsburgh Steelers in Bloomington, Minnesota, Metropolitan Stadium, where the Minnesota Vikings used to play. And I wish they still did play, because that's where football, I'm an old fart, so please forgive me. That's where football is supposed to be played. Outdoors, in the weather elements, on grass. If you don't like it, don't play. Then they had a very good season. They wind up, just a season of like streaks here. I mean, including like their last 2 preseason games and their first 3 games of the season. They won 5 games in a row. Then they lost 5 games in a row. Then they won their final 4 to actually have that 7-5 overall record here, as you see, because they only played 7-5, third place. As they only played 12 games in 1950, and I wasn't in 1961 when they started playing 14 games. When we go to the Redskins here, I said, this is just, you're going to see a whole lot of L's as they finish the season 3-9. Whole lot of L's. But they only won, and when they did win, it wasn't by much. They beat the Rams by 2 points in preseason. They lost all their other preseason games. They beat the Steelers by 6 points. Then they beat the Cardinals by 9 points. And their only other win, they won by 3 points over the Colts. I'm not really sure, how on God's green earth that wound up happening, because the Colts wound up winning the championship. Yeah, it just goes to show you, even crappy teams, right? Any given Sunday, anything can happen. So one of the worst teams in the NFL beat the best team in the NFL in 1959, 27-24. Go figure. But you'll see here with the the Redskins, they did play the Lions in Briggs Stadium in Detroit. We got the Packers here in Winston-Salem, I'm sorry. They played the Bears in Jacksonville, Florida. They played the Colts Memorial Stadium. They played the Rams in Memorial Coliseum. And then they played the 49ers in Kezar Stadium. So pretty much they only played 2 games out of the norm, 2 games here in neutral sites. Most of the other teams pretty much played them. A lot of the other teams played about 4 games at neutral sites. But you'll notice here, quite possibly, where are we at here? See, they didn't play a home game, period, until October 11th at Chicago against the Cardinals. I'm assuming at Griffith Stadium, their home games was occupied possibly by baseball. So, but I said they were kind of a mess. And you see here they were 3-9-1. 1959. They were not. As I said, after the 45 championship game, they lost. That was the goalpost game or the upright game. Not sure if it was the goal. Not sure if it was a crossbar or the upright. Not exactly. I don't remember. But that was the 15-14. That was the final game for the Cleveland Rams. Next season, they would go out and become the Los Angeles Rams. That was a freaking cold day. I wasn't there. In 1945, the Rams won 15-14. I can't remember what period it was, what quarter it was. Sammy Baugh dropped back to pass in his own end zone, threw the ball, and apparently a gust of wind got it and either hit the crossbar or one of the uprights and bounced back, I think, into the end zone. And it wound up being a safety at that particular point in time. 2 points for the Rams. Well, what was the final score? 15-14 Rams. So, possibly, maybe, if it wasn't for that safety, maybe the Redskins wound up winning. But anyway, from 1936 to 1945, those 10 seasons, the Redskins, whether they were the Boston Redskins or whether they were the Washington Redskins, those 10 seasons, the Redskins went to 6 championship games. They went 36 and 37. 36, they were the Boston Redskins. 37, they were the Washington Redskins. And they went back in 1940. They played the Bears. They only lost 73-0. So that was a close game. And in 1942, they beat the Chicago Bears 14-6. They possibly beat one of the best Chicago Bear teams of all time. Although it's a little skewed because obviously with World War II, so a lot of the teams were were depleted. But that Bear team that year in 1942 was just straight up killing people. But the Redskins took care of business in the 1942 championship game. And then in 1943, that's when Sammy Baugh got knocked out by Sid Luckman returning a punt. And the Bears won 41-21 in that championship game. And then they went back in 1945 for their final championship. So in a 10-year period of time, the Redskins with Sammy Baugh were rather impressive. But after 1945, boy, it was whoo. From 1946 to 1971, it was slim pickings for those Redskins, let me tell you what. But let's go over a little bit of Bowman Gray Stadium here, shall we? There's not a whole heck of a lot on it, although one thing it is for sure, it was built, had NASCAR in mind. Basically, it was an oval, and in the oval was, grass, and in the grass they, played football. And I'll show you, got a couple pictures of that. All right, here we go. Bowman Gray Stadium, where this game got played at. All right. There's a multi-use sports facility in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The complex consists of 0.250 miles of paved oval short track and a gridiron football field. That's pretty much about it. The complex has held various events since its opening in 1938, including NASCAR sanctioned events and college football games for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons and the Winston-Salem State Rams. Bowman Gray Stadium is owned by the city of Winston-Salem and operated by both NASCAR and Winston-Salem State University for events. Built during the Great Depression, Bowman Gray Stadium opened in 1938, hosting football games and festivals in its first year. Auto racing made its first appearance the year after. After a short-lived attempt, racing was revived in 1947 when the dirt track around the football field was paved under promoter Lou Franco. 2 years later, businessmen Bill France Sr. and Alvin Hawkins took over the stadium's racing promotions under the sanctioning body of NASCAR, with racing becoming a mainstay after NASCAR's rise in popularity. Over the following decades, the stadium's condition declined steadily. In the 1990s and 2000s, a series of renovations were made to the stadium, improving its amenities and condition. In the 2020s, further renovations to the stadium were made, leading to the return of NASCAR Cup Series after over 50 years of absence. It says as of 2024, the stadium has a capacity of about 17,000. And let's see. And it says for the game here, between the Packers and the Redskins. It was about 15,000 there. We're going to show you pictures of the stadium and all of that. Let's see here. First events and short-lived auto racing promotions were there. The first college football game occurred on October 22nd, 1938, with Duke winning against Wake Forest by a score of 7-0. You got brief auto racing period was there that also failed due to low attendance. Return of NASCAR Cup Series. Those started coming back. See, I mean, it's not a big oval. It ain't big at all. Gridiron football. Actually, in 2023, Bowman Gray Stadium hosted its first baseball game with the minor league team Carolina Disco Turkeys hosting as tenants. Bowman Gray Stadium has been featured in multiple television series. Interesting. And then there's a whole bunch of all right, so we got I got some pictures which will go to show you, it's the oval track and all that and everything. All right, let's see here. Is that it? Yep, there we go. Just a bunch of pictures here. All right, so you can see the stands. We'll show you from the other, right? But here's the oval track. It's nothing huge. I mean, it's like if you got like NASCAR, this is not much of a turn here, boy. I'll tell you. I mean, once you start giving it some gas, you step on the gas, you got to slow down. I mean, it's just But if you can see here, it's very difficult. But you can see here, there's the goalpost right here. And then way down over here, which will show you another picture of, I think somewhere along this is the scoreboard down here. Here's a football game. Here's the stand, is it right? Here's the stands here. The same thing would be on this side as well too. You can see like the track right here would be around here. Now I'm not sure if this is the dirt track or if it was paved or not, but you can see. Here's like a an artist's description, I guess, of the stadium. Right, so this looks like dirt right here. So you can see that's it's not a huge I mean you look right. They start coming around the corner. So you got from here to here is 120 yards, and then you figure right. So you add another 20 yards or so before it starts turning. So it might be 140. Well, actually, that's at the turn there. So from here, the straightaway from here to here might be 100. Oh. I do apologize. Let's see. I clicked on it a lot. Might be 140 yards, 130 yards of a straightaway. I mean, that ain't much. I tell you, you got those NASCAR. I mean, once they step on the gas, they're going to be from here to here in no time. So it's But you can see the stands here. And here's, I guess, this is the scoreboard right here. You can see obviously the goalposts here, but that's just an artist's description right there. Here's another picture of it, more modern. That's more modern goalposts right here. This, basically it's just like a big horseshoe, right? And you can see now this is the paved version, obviously, of the track. Let's see. I know I saw. Let me see if I can find it. It was definitely one of the football pictures. They had a picture of the kind of like the scoreboard. This is another. There you can see right there. I mean, there ain't much to it. Right here, we got that. And there's the stands right here. Some stands over here. Right. I'm trying to think where I saw it. I know that there was a picture I saw. Oh, here you go. Now here's the scoreboard right there. I don't know what this is, what game this is or whatever, but here's the scoreboard and all. Let me see if I can click on it here. All right, so let me stop sharing this. Let me see if I can do a little bit of a different. Here we go. All right. Okay, good. A little bit of a bigger, and I can maybe open it up a little bit here. There we go. So I have no idea who this is. This is not the Packers and the Redskins. I can guarantee you that. But see, I mean, look how fancy that scoreboard is, huh? We got the visitors. We got the home. We got the first down, right? 10 yards to go. I guess that's the quarter, right? And here's how much time is left, and that's it. I guess you got a horn on the top or whatever for whatever reason. But I mean that is not much, and that for that's one of those weird things, right? Somehow, some way, the Washington Redskins and the Green Bay Packers with Vince Lombardi and Bart Starr and all that wind up playing in a field for exhibition that look like this. Part of it down there look like just like that, and a NASCAR racetrack. Go figure, right? Go figure. Now, some of that was also, obviously to go to different parts of the country to see, some of it was just show off pro football. Because, if you're going down south, there wasn't, the only thing down south was South California back then. We had the Rams and the 49ers. Other than that, I mean, you had Cleveland was up, Ohio, obviously. You had Pittsburgh, you had Philadelphia, you had Washington and Maryland. You had the Giants. Let's see, of course, and you had the Chicago Cardinals, you had the Chicago Bears, you had the Green Bay Packers. If I said the Philadelphia Eagles, did I say them? Baltimore Colts. I mean, everybody was up in the Northeast. Northeast, the Detroit Lions. There was nothing, absolutely nothing down south. 1960, the following season, the Cowboys popped around. So, we had a little something going on in the South there. But then the next expansion, the next thing was, boom, popped back up, Minnesota. You had the was it 1966, I believe, was when the 66 the Falcons came around. I think 66 the Dolphins came around. 67 the New Orleans Saints came around. So wasn't the 66, 67, you had some teams started popping up down south. More teams, but as I said, 1960 was like the first time that a team, the Dallas Cowboys, and if you go to the AFL, obviously, the Dallas Texans popped up, but 1950 up to 19, there was nothing down south, absolutely nothing. So they put, the Packers played a game, obviously, in Maine. Nothing had ever been played there before, professional football wise. They played a game out in Oregon. Right? They played a game down in Winston-Salem. Then they played a game in Minnesota, Bloomington, Minnesota. So so a lot of teams played, all over, in the exhibition anyway. But so I got a few articles here. None of them are real in depth and detailed, but there's some nice little articles here. Some of the articles will get a little more in depth and detailed when the regular season starts around. It's just kind of a shame, guy, because there's a couple articles here from like a North Carolina papers, and there's, it's a little article, nothing crazy. It just goes to show you that it was like, of course, at the time, there was two not very good teams played down there, but there just wasn't a ton of coverage. They didn't put them in a big stadium. There were big stadiums down there. Didn't put them in a big stadium. And it said only about 15,000 people showed up to the game. So So let's go over. Let's see. Who do we got first here? This one's a little Winston-Salem. The Winston-Salem Journal. We're going to go to the September 13th edition of the Winston-Salem Journal. This one's a couple pages in length. This one here says Lombardi likes Packers offense. This was kind of like, after the game is over, by Frank Spencer. Vince Lombardi, the old Army coach and former tutor of the Giants' backfield and their offensive coach, was all smiles as he walked off the Bowman Gray Stadium turf last night. His Green Bay Packers had just warded off a last-minute drive by the Washington Redskins and won 20-13 in the Piedmont Bowl. Now, I'm not sure if it was called the Piedmont Bowl from 55 to 60 when they played, 6 consecutive times then in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That I don't know. But Lombardi said, I thought our offensive team played very well, said Lombardi. Paul Hornung ran well, and Joe Francis ran the team well. Now, you got to remember also in 1959, Vince Lombardi had like 4 quarterbacks. At this particular point in time, he really didn't know Bart Starr was going to become the Hall of Famer he was. I mean, he tried guys and a lot of guys in these exhibition games for lengths of time, meaning quarterbacks, to see not only who was going to be maybe the main guy for the regular season, but also who was going to have to be let go. This is Lombardi's first year as head coach of Green Bay, and he has a lot of confidence in his team, inexperienced as it is. I thought our defense was poor, Lombardi said. They moved the ball at will against us. We tried to meet the situation in the second half, but they still moved well. Lombardi thought the turning point for Green Bay came on the first play of the second half. Turning point for us came when Jim Taylor brought that kickoff back 51 yards. Now, here you go. I mean, you got to, this goes to show you got to, you didn't know it at the time. You got a Hall of Fame running back bringing back a kickoff. That got our offensive moving, and it looked good the rest of the time. Jim, I thought, played a whale of a game for us, he added. And this Hornung is one of the great backs in professional football. Just look, he scored all of our points, and he did. He ran, caught passes, and he did the kicking. And, of course, don't forget, he scored, was it 176 points? I think it was. In a 12-game season. I guess that was 1960. I don't know. But we are all still so young and inexperienced, as you could see in those final minutes. The kids just didn't know what to do, and you can't tell them under such conditions. Turning back to Francis and the job of quarterbacking that the second-year man from Oregon State did, Lombardi said, Francis picked his plays well and passed well. He threw 2 passes that I thought might have gone for touchdowns. He hit Steve Meilinger twice, and I thought those passes could have been caught. Talks with Amen. Lombardi stepped aside to talk with his old Army coaching mate, Paul Amen, now head coach at Wake Forest. They talked a few minutes of old times. Paul asked Vince how his son, Junior, was doing. He's playing football, fullback, I hear, said Amen. That's right, smiled Lombardi. I will have him down at Wake Forest next year for you. He's a senior. I guess I'll have to make a Baptist out of him. Hornung, stepping from under a shower, wrestled a moment with a cramp in his right foot. Yes, I'll have to say it was one of my better games, I guess, said the ex-Notre Dame star and the ex-Heisman Trophy winner. We were jittery at the start, but settled down and played good offensive football. Francis did a hell of a job calling plays and passing. He was a real fine quarterback tonight, said Hornung. The star, who had scored all 20 of Green Bay's points, also had praise for the offensive line. They hit sharply and kind of made it easy for us, he said. Nixon, not downhearted. Over in Washington dressing room, Coach Mike Nixon was not downhearted about the outcome. We played well enough to have won, said Nixon. We moved the ball well, but fumbled too many scoring opportunities. We missed Baker, who would have meant a minimum of 15 points more for us. It's tough not to have a kicker. They knew that we wouldn't kick and set their defense accordingly. There you go. I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Okay. Let's find something out, huh? Baker, who was suffering from a back injury, remained in his room under doctor's orders. There you go. Sam was much better today, said Nixon, and we are very encouraged that his condition is not serious. We won't really know what's wrong with him, with his back, until he gets back to Washington, but Dr. Robert Moore feels that it isn't serious. Nixon singles out some players. Nixon said that he thought our offensive unit played well. Ralph Guglielmi did a fine job at quarterback, and Ed Sutton ran very well. I thought that Jim Carson played a whale of a fine game for us. It wasn't one of our better games. We didn't score enough. You have to score 28 points to win in this league, and we didn't get that many. Sure, we moved the ball well, 3, 4, or 5 first downs, and then we'd miss. That's when Baker would have come in handy. But we'll be all right. This is a good football team. We need to polish our offense and defense, but that's what these early games are for. I think we'll have a real good club. Yeah. That was the summation of the man who marched with military precision, something like 25 miles during the game, up and down in front of his bench. Often he would throw his gears into reverse and back up with perfect step for 20 yards. 3 pro scouts eyed the two teams. Steve Owens of Montreal, the Canadian League, was on hand to look at some boys we might be able to get later on. Babe Demon Chef, backfield coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who has been following Washington this fall, said that this is the best game I've seen the Redskins play. They have terrific running power. Pete Hallis of the Chicago Bears also did his scouting from the press box. All right, so then we got once again, this is just weird as it is. Well, all I got to say, let me hear. Paul Hornung steals show as Packers beat Redskins. And this is the way it is. I mean, they play the games at nighttime. I guess they get the flash, and you can get a picture, a nice picture of the guys. But it looks like in the background, there's like they're playing in complete darkness. That's what it looks like. But then I'll point out the error in this picture here. Redskins, Ed Sutton, arrow is stopped by Packer Fred Thurston, number 66, which is Ray Nitschke. Fred Thurston's not number 66, and Fred Thurston doesn't play defense. And Emlyn Tunnell right after 10-yard gains. Here's Emlyn Tunnell. Here's Ray Nitschke. And you'll notice the Packers, this is definitely the pre-1961 because they don't have any insignia on the side of their helmet. They didn't get the G onto the helmet in the 1961 season. All right, so second half rally nets the 20-13 win. 14,000 seed the Piedmont Bowl. It said 14,000 here. On the Pro Football Archives, it said 15,000. So I mean, we might go to another newspaper and they might say 15,000. Halfback Paul Hornung did everything but sell the fat Piedmont Bowl programs last night as he led the Green Bay Packers to a 20-13 victory over Washington Redskins at the Bowman Gray Stadium. The former Notre Dame All-American and Heisman Trophy winner scored all the Packers' points as a partisan Redskins crowd estimated at 14,000 alternately groaned and begrudgingly applauded. So you get I guess if this is true, I'm not. Let's see here, 26. Yeah, I guess. I mean, they got 27 first downs. That's a lot of first downs. Then they got about the Redskins about 200 yards rushing, 150, so they have 350 yards. So basically, like right here, I guess a lot of their game was like this. Ed Sutton got a 10-yard gain, so he picked up first down, I guess. Right, so pretty much, they were moving up and down the field. And they must have got like 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 yards every couple plays or whatever and got a first down. Apparently, there was like maybe no huge plays for the Redskins. Because you got 350 yards and you wind up with 27 first downs out of that. You're not getting huge chunks of yardage on any particular play. But the Packers, as they did most of their preseason games, they got a lot of rushing yards, yards passing, only 60 yards passing. They were only 5 out of 15. And they did throw 2 interceptions. The standout performance netted him the most outstanding player award in the professional football exhibition game. It wasn't all Horning's show, although the 215-pounder got the climactic points that brought the Packers from behind a 13-10 three-quarter deficit. It was 13-10. The Redskins were winning going into the fourth quarter. The Packers scored 10 points in the last quarter to pull it out. It was also Green Bay's second win in the 5-game Pro Series here, which has another year under the current contract with the sponsoring Junior Chamber of Commerce and Peace Officers Pension Fund. Okay, there you go. 5-game Pro Series here. So it's got one more. So in 1960, I guess the 5-game Pro Series, I guess maybe 56, 57, 58, 59, 66. I guess those 5 years. So after 1960, they didn't play this anymore down in Winston-Salem. See, Green Bay won in 1957, 20-17. Washington won in 1955, 1956. Oh, okay. So it must be 6. This is the 5th year out of 6 years. Okay, so they played 1955. Washington won. 1956. Washington won 17-10. Last year, 1958, they won 23-14. Green Bay won in 57 and in 59. So they played a grand total of, I guess, 6 games. 55 to 60. They played grand total 6 games, exhibition games in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I guess somehow wound up becoming the Piedmont Bowl. All right, his 46-yard field goal. His most spectacular feat was a 46-yard field goal midway through the final quarter, which put the game virtually out of reach of more than just a tie for the Redskins. Little Eddie LeBaron, without benefit of practice this week because of a trip to California for a bar exam, almost forged that possible deadlock with a desperate last 2-minute drive. However, a 4th down pass from the 10 was off and Joe Walton's fingertips, and the Packers had their 3rd victory in 5 exhibition games this season. The Redskins, who started off like a winner by marching 77 yards in 10 plays for a 6-0 lead, suffered their 4th loss in 5 exhibition games. However, this week's defensive performance was apparently far superior to that last week that yielded a 52-14 loss to the Chicago Bears. The defense held the Packers at bay until 2:25 was left in the half, when Horning capped a 50-yard drive with a 25-yard field goal. But in the second half, Green Bay took a leaf, it says. I guess it means took a lead from the Redskin book. Took a leaf from the Redskin book. Okay. With sophomore Jim Taylor taking the opening kickoff back 51 yards, opening kickoff of the second half, to the Washington 37-yard line. The Packers were in position to take the lead. Apparently, it took 6 plays. That did take in 6 plays, with Horning gaining 18 and Taylor 13 yards before Horning hit right tackle for the final 4 yards, and then he kicked the 10th point. LeBaron, who completed 11 of 22 passes for 116 yards, guided the Redskins right back into the lead. They went 71 yards in 13 plays. The big boy gainer in the drive was fullback Don Bosseler, who gained 32 yards. The payoff was a 7-yard pass to John Carson, who made a leaping catch in the end zone corner. Ralph Felton, subbing for the injured Sam Baker, kicked the 13-point after missing the first Redskin conversion attempt. Francis leads winning drive. Quarterback Joe Francis engineered what amounted to the winning drive late in the third period, with rookie Tim Brown of LSU and Taylor joining in the fun along with Horning. The drive covered 62 yards in 10 plays. The key was a third down pass to Brown for 20 yards to the 3-yard line. Horning banged the right side for the score and kicked the point number 17 just as the fourth period opened. A Redskin gamble set up the final score. Having moved to their 45, the Redskins gambled for 3 yards on fourth down and lost by 2 feet on a running play by Jim Podoley. Packers advanced only to the Washington 39, but on fourth down, Horning planted the ball through the uprights from 7 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, from 46 yards out, with feet to spare. It capped a brilliant performance by the blonde speedster. He gained 49 yards and 8 rushes. I mean, that's not bad. Was it 6 yards a carry? And we got a little bit more in the story here. But then here, right here, these guys right here, zoop, stop thief. Redskins Bill Shepard, former Wake Forest Demon, and Washington trainer Kelly Miller show their protest. They were watching Green Bay back Tom Bettis intercept a pass by Redskin Eddie LeBaron. All right, so let me go a few pages here. Whoop. And here we go. A couple more pictures here. It's like, is this Horning going in for a touchdown? Green Bay Horning barrels 4 yards for a touchdown. Yeah. And here, Redskin bites the dust. Washington's Jim Podoley is stopped after a 9-yard gain to Green Bay 34-yard line by Green Bay's Jesse Whittington and Bob Freeman, who is on the ground at the right. Freeman is down here. Leading interference on the play is Redskin tackle Will Renfro, number 71. Action took place during the first quarter of last night's exhibition. Packers stopped Washington by 20-13 and caught 2 passes for 20 yards in addition to his 20-point effort. Taylor was the top ground gainer for Green Bay with 72 yards and 11 attempts. Boswell led both teams with 87 yards on 18 carries. Sutton gained 48 and 6, and Podoley 42 and 10 in the Redskin offense. That top Green Bay, the offense-wise, 348 yards for the Redskins to only 268 for the Packers. Except for the third period score and a late near miss by the Redskins, the second half was mostly Green Bay's show. However, the first half was mostly Washington's show. Redskins strike early and late. In the first half, Washington exploded most of its fireworks at the outset and near the end, and Green Bay got off only one successful march. Quarterback Ralph Guglielmi, ex-Notre Dame All-American, guided the Redskins 77 yards in 10 plays for a touchdown. One of the big gainers was a 21-yarder by ex-North Carolina star Ed Sutton. The halfback took a short pass and dodged his way to the Green Bay 44. The Skins almost struck on the next play, but a Guglielmi pass slipped through the arms of end Joe Walton on the goal line. Sutton picked up the march with a 12-yard dash off right end behind crunching blocking. 2 plays later, Guglielmi hit Walton for 12 yards to the 9. Halfback Jim Podoley rounded left end for the touchdown, with big assistance from the blocking of Sutton and Don Bosseler. Near the end of the first half, a fumble by Jim Taylor stopped a Green Bay threat on the Washington 43. Tackle Don Lawrence, looks like, recovered. The Skins ran back to the Packers 29 before Podoley fumbled. John Simak recovered and almost got away before being stopped on the Washington 34 by Ray Lemek. Green Bay moved to the 39 in the second period, with Joe Francis taking over the quarterbacking from Bart Starr. The drive stalled when a Francis pass was inches too long to A.D. Williams on the goal line. With 5 minutes left, Green Bay began to move. Paul Hornung slithered 12 yards to the Packer 44, and Taylor banged up the middle for 18 to the Washington 36. Don McElhaney ripped off 12 before the skin line tightened. The Packers got to the 18, and Hornung went back to the 25 and kicked a field goal with 2:25 left in the half. Veteran quarterback Eddie LeBaron came in for the first time to a big ovation and guided the Redskins 55 yards in the last 2 minutes of the half. But after 5 first downs carried to the Packer 31, Green Bay back Tom Bettis intercepted on the 20 and returned it to the 40 as time ran out with the Skins ahead 6-3. I guess that's pretty much going to say yeah, pretty much. All right, so that's pretty much about that one. I do have other ones. I got some other ones here. All right, let me stop. Okay, so now we got the Wisconsin State Journal. Let's see what they got to say here. Wisconsin State Journal. All right, so this is page 40 of the September 13th, 1959 edition of the Wisconsin State Journal. Packers trip Redskins. Hornung stars in 20-13 win, scores all the points in pacing comeback. A startling fourth quarter rally for 10 points pulled the Green Bay Packers to a 20-13 victory Saturday night over the Washington Redskins. The victory was the third in 5 National Football League exhibition games for the Packers under new coach Vince Lombardi. Washington has won one of give preseason games. Okay. Fourth quarter rally. Paul Hornung scored all the Green Bay points on touchdowns, runs of 3 and 4 yards, 2 conversions, and field goals of 25 and 46 yards. Half of Hornung's markers came in the fourth quarter as the Packers fought back from a 13-10 deficit to win. The Redskins stirred the crowd of 14,000 with a last-minute bid for a tie under the guidance of Eddie LeBaron. The little quarterback pushed his club to the Green Bay's 5-yard line, only to have 3 successive passes batted down. The game's first touchdown was made by Washington halfback Jim Podoley on a 9-yard end run that capped the 77-yard march after the opening kickoff. Skins take the lead. Hornung booted his 25-yard field goal in the second period and put Green Bay ahead on a 4-yard thrust in the third quarter to cap an 82-yard march. Washington took a 13-10 lead later in the third quarter on a 7-yard pass from LeBaron to Ed John Carson and Ralph Felton's conversion. Early in the fourth period, Hornung plunged 3 yards to complete a 73-yard march and then converted to put the Packers ahead for good. His 45-yard field goal came with 9 minutes left to end the scoring. So you can see here, right? Washington scored a touchdown, but they missed the conversion because they had a backup kicker in there. And Hornung kicked the field goal, so it was 6-3 at halftime. Both teams scored a touchdown, so it was 13-10. The Redskins going into the fourth quarter, and that's when Packers scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to wind up winning. That was a short one. All right, so what do we got next here? We got the Journal Times. Okay, let's see what the Journal Times got to say. So screen Journal Times. Okay, September 13th edition, 1959, page 31 of the Journal Times. Packers triumph 20-13. Hornung scores them all. Paul Hornung scored all the Green Bay points Saturday night as the Green Bay Packers defeated the Washington Redskins 20-13 in an exhibition game between National Football League teams. Halfback Hornung, the former Notre Dame star, scored touchdowns on runs of 4 and 3 yards, converted both extra points, and booted field goals of 25 and 46 yards. The Green Bay victory achieved in the city's 5th annual Piedmont Bowl game before 14,000. Another one that says 14,000. So Pro Football Archive said there was 15,000, so I'm not sure where they got that number at. But these articles here said it was 14,000. Not that it matters at all. You know, man. And the Piedmont Bowl gave for 14,000 gave the Packers a 3-2 record for the exhibition season so far. Washington has won 1 of 5 games. Last minute bid. The Redskins made a last minute bid for a tie under the guidance of Eddie LeBaron. Little quarterback pushed his club to the Green Bay, and he was little. I mean, he was on like 5'6", 5'8", something like. He was not big at all. Big heart, good quarterback, but he was little. He pushed his club to the Green Bay 5-yard line, only to have 3 successive passes batted down. The game's first touchdown was made by Washington halfback Jim Podoley on a 9-yard end run that capped a 77-yard march after the opening kickoff. Horning booted his 25-yard field goal in the second period and put Green Bay ahead on a 4-yard thrust in the third quarter to cap an 82-yard march. Washington took a 13-10 lead later in the third quarter on a 7-yard pass from LeBaron to end John Carson and Ralph Felton's conversion. Early in the fourth quarter, Horning plunged 3 yards to complete a 75-yard march and then converted to put the Packers ahead for good. His 45-yard field goal came with 9 minutes left to end the scoring. So that was a small one right there. It's the same thing right here. You know, did not have an extensive stat sheet here. All right, so that was the Journal Times, and we got the Green Bay Press Gazette. Did I do the? Whoops! No, I didn't. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think I did this one. All right, so I got all right, Green Bay Press Gazette. Let's find the Green Bay Press Gazette here. Where are we here? Share screen, Green Bay Press Gazette. All right, let's see here. Okay. Packers whip Skins 20-13 with golden touch. Here's the picture you saw before. All right. Jim Podoley, 9-yard gain on Packers 34-yard line by Bob Freeman, who's on the ground. Last night during Saturday night's game at Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Leading interference on the play is Will Renfro. Number 87 at the right is Packer end Nate Borden. Nate Borden right there. All right, so Horning scores 20 with Francis at quarterback. All right, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The Packers used a golden touch to win the big game of the 1959 non-league season here Saturday night. The score was 20-13, but the victims were the Redskins and the golden touch. That would be Paul Horning, the golden boy of Notre Dame and the Pack's bonus choice in 1957, who scored all 20 of the Green Bay's points on 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and 2 extra points. He gained 49 yards in 8 carries, so like 6 yards a carry. Caught 2 passes for 20 yards and completed 1 pass for 5 yards. Horning was a unanimous winner of the Piedmont Bowl's most valuable player. This was a nationwide television production, and the Packers, fresh from their worst season in history, used the big occasion to show their thousands of fans that they haven't forgot how to win. So it was, go figure, there's a nationwide television production. With a 3-2 record thus far, the Packers now have tied last year's 1 record, 2 non-league wins, and 1 in the league. The Bay's preseason ends against the Steelers in Minneapolis next Sunday. The victory gave the Packers a split in the East, having lost to the Giants 14-0 in Bangor, Maine the previous Saturday. I do apologize. And when, as I said, that the game that was played in Bangor, Maine against the Giants, that was the first ever professional football game played in Maine. And I show you during that video, I mean, you look at Bangor, Maine is like out in the middle of freaking like nowhere. You know. But they did pack the stands. There's like 12,000 people there. They packed the stands. The Bays had to come from behind twice to dampen the partisan Redskin crowd of 15,000. So this is where they get 15,000 from Pro Football Archives. In the Piedmont Bowl, Washington led 6-3 at the half, but the Packers cranked ahead 10-6 and then behind 13-10 in the third period. The Pack scored 10 in the last quarter to win. Pineapple, Joe Francis, low man on the Packers quarterback poll at the start of the season, engineered the 20-point total in the last three frames. Bart Starr, going for his number one victory, started and ran into a couple of drop passes, a penalty, and two lost fumbles, including one of his own, before being replaced by Francis early in the second quarter. Francis worked a 50-yard push to set up Horning's 25-yard field goals for a 6-3 score just before the half. Early in the second half, the Pack went 37 yards in 6 plays for Horning's first touchdown, a 4-yard smash. After Washington scored on Eddie LeBaron's 7-yard pass to Don Bosseler, Francis worked a 62-yard touchdown push in 9 plays to put the Bays ahead 17-13, with Horning scoring from 3 yards out on the second play of the fourth period. Horning booted a 47-yard field goal with 10 yards to spare to set the final score. Francis didn't pass the Redskins, but those two, a 9-yarder to Horning and a key 22-yarder to Tim Brown, set up the payoff touchdown. Starr completed 2 out of 5 for 31 yards, but he should have had 2 more completions in 15 attempts. Whew. One of the Bays' offensive highlights was the 208-yard rushing total, the top figure of the early season. Strong Jim Taylor. Well, one of the Bays' offensive highlights was the 208-yard rushing total. Its top figure. I mean, it's fantastic. But there was another one. I can't remember if it was against the Bears or not, but they did put up like 190 yards rushing in one of their other games as well too. They didn't do so well. They got about like 130 yards, I think, the week before against the Giants. But one of the things they ran the ball. Their passing attack was nothing super spectacular, just in the preseason so far. It's just preseason, but they did run the ball, and that was the Lombardi way: run the ball, run to daylight, right? Strong Jim Taylor added 72 yards, Horning added 49, Francis 28, and Carpenter 23 to set the pace. The Packer defense, tougher than whalebone versus the Giants, was nicked for 348 yards, including 198 in the air. Ralph Guglielmi moved the club 77 yards for a touchdown to start the game, but the Redskins never moved much until the final half. Packers didn't win it easy. A busted signal and a bad 14-yard punt gave the Redskins a last-minute chance to win, but LeBaron went down, making 4 pitches from the Packer 10. The key will was a third-down leap of a LeBaron throw by Tom Bratz, who tipped the ball out of danger. LeBaron was wide of Joe Walton on the last Redskin play with 40 seconds left. While the Redskins won the battle of statistics, they managed only 2 concerted drives all night, a 77-yard push just after receiving the opening kickoff with Guglielmi at the throttle and a 71-yard march behind LeBaron in the third period. The Redskins ripped off 10 plays, including 8 healthy rushes to get a 6-0 jump in the first 5 minutes, along with the way Guglielmi threw a 21-yard pass to Sutton and a 10-yarder to Walton. Podolly scored standing up on a 9-yard run around end. Felton's try for the extra point was wide. An offside penalty, 2 drop passes, and Shooting linebackers on third down ruined Starr's first bid. Bart, on his next, worked the ball from his own, 20. Here it says from his on 20. I guess worked the ball from his own 20 to the Redskins 47, chiefly on a 19-yard pass to Gary Knafel, an 11-yarder to Horning, but Taylor fumbled the ball away. John Simak recovered a fumble to start another drive, but needed a yard on third down. Starr fumbled after picking up 3 yards, and the Redskins recovered on the first play of the second period. Francis followed Starr and got some points in just before the half. Horning ran 12 yards, Taylor 19, and Hugh McElhaney ran 13. So you realize, right here, you do realize. I mean, this is something you're never going to see. Never going to see. You really, I guess, in one way you can't, because it's all about the Benjamins nowadays, right? It's all about the Benjamins. You can't possibly have 4 Hall of Famers in the backfield, because it would cost you about $3.7 trillion, I guess, nowadays. So you got Starr, quarterback, Bart Starr, quarterback, Hall of Famer, handing the ball off to Paul Horning, Hall of Famer, handing the ball off to Jim Taylor, Hall of Famer, and Hugh Don McElhaney, 13 yards. So another Hall of Famer. I do believe that would be Don McElhaney. Let me just see here. Just make sure before I wind up shoot my mouth off here. Let's see if he played. I know he played. He played with several teams. I know one of the teams he played with was with the Giants also too. Yep, yeah, he played 50. Yep. Hey, Don, hold on here, Don. 6 foot. Is this him? 6 foot? I do apologize. Oh, maybe it wasn't. Nope. It must be another McElhaney. This guy's a different McElhaney. Okay. He played, this McElhaney played with the Packers, Don McElhaney, 57, 58, and 59. Then he played with the Cowboys in 1960 and 61. Then it's 1961 he finished his career with the 49ers. So it wasn't, I thought it might be 4 Hall of Famers. So I do apologize. Actually, it was three Hall of Famers. So this McElhaney is a different McElhaney. There's a Mac who is a Hall of Famer, but this isn't it. But anyway, you got Starr Hall of Famer, Horning Hall of Famer, Taylor Hall of Famer. All right, so turn to page 19, column 2. What do we have here? Let's see if okay. Pack Golden Touch tips Skins 2013. Set up Paul Horning's 25-yard field goal for a 6-3 score at halftime. Taylor set up the Packers first lead with a 50-yard kickoff return to the Redskins 37. Now, it's in the other article, I think he said he had a 51-yard kickoff return. But let's see. Brown and Horning each banged for 6, and Horning cracked 13 to the 12-yard line. Taylor slammed to the 8, and Horning cracked over and booted the point. The Redskin touchdown drive followed, with LeBaron throwing a strike of 7 yards to Bosler, who made a fine catch in the corner of the end zone. The Bays then snapped back with zest, scoring in 9 plays. The big gains were 8 yards by Francis, the pass to Horning for 11, Taylor's 12-yard run, and a well-executed flare pass to Brown, who raced down with the side lights for 20, I guess, raced down with this, maybe the sidelines, maybe, I don't know, for 22 yards to the Redskin 3. Horning banged over from there and converted. The Redskins tried for a 4th down with 2 to go at midfield, but Bob Freeman came up with a sharp tackle on Podoley to give the Packers the ball. A Packer offside penalty plus 10 yards on 2 runs brought on Horning's 47-yard field goal to make the final score 20-13. LeBaron went to the air and moved to the Packers' 28, where on 2nd down and 9, he lofted a high throw deep. Emlyn Tunnell outjumped Anderson on the 10 and returned to the 23 with 3 minutes left. This looked like the game for Green Bay, especially when Carpenter gained 18 yards on a sweep to the 41. But the Redskins tightened, forced a 4th and 1 punt situation. McGee promptly got the worst punt of his pro career out of his system. A straight-up job that went out of bounds on the Redskin 36. Wow. That's horrible. It says, McGee promptly got the worst punt of his pro career out of his system. A straight-up job that went out of bounds on the Redskin 36 with 1 minute, 40 seconds left. The Redskins really moved this time via the air until they reached the 15. Hurrah. So I guess they got down to the 10 and couldn't get any farther. They got down to the 10, and then they said in those articles they got down to the 5, and then they threw 3 passes, and I guess they were all tipped away, so it fell incomplete. But this is the Packers had 3 wins and 2 losses, but I mean, one of their wins, there was a jump ball. Owens, White Tittle threw an alley-oop pass to Owens when the Packers beat the 49ers by 7 points, 24-17. Owens caught the ball and he got knocked out of bounds, like just inside the 1-yard line. Had the ball been thrown another yard, Owens maybe jumps up, grabs it, maybe catches it in the end zone. They score a touchdown. They wind up tying the extra, And this one here, they wound up winning 20-13. But the Redskins had a chance, just couldn't quite get it done. But then again, once again, this is all exhibition, right? So that's the way it was on this date, September 12th, 1959, between the Green Bay Packers and the Washington Redskins at the Piedmont Bowl, is what they wound up calling it. In Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.